Welcome to the May Lunch and Learn for the L. Douglas Wilder School of Government and Public Affairs at Virginia Commonwealth University. My name is James Wazalewski, and I'm the Director of Development for the Wilder School. Thank you for joining us today. Our session will feature keynote speaker Governor L. Douglas Wilder, as well as our moderator, Dean Susan Gooden, for the discussion, Leadership, What Do You Produce? As a reminder, we are recording this session and the Q&A portion. This includes comments in the chat. For those of you who wish to enable closed captioning for the live session, please click on the CC Live transcript icon in your Zoom meeting controls on the bottom navigation bar. If you cannot see this button, click on the More icon. From the pop-up box, click the Enable Auto Transcription button. You also see this information in your chat box if you missed anything I said at this point in time, so it will be there for your availability. We are pleased to have each of you here for our session as we continue our efforts to engage and evolve our community and our alumni. At this time, I would like to introduce Dr. Susan Gooden. Susan T. Gooden, PhD, is Dean and Professor at the L. Douglas Wilder School of Government and Public Affairs at Virginia Commonwealth University. She is an internationally recognized expert on social equity. She is an elected fellow of the congressionally chartered National Academy of Public Administration and is the past president of the American Society for Public Administration. She is the vice president of the Network of Associated Schools of Public Policy, Affairs, and Administration, or NASPA, and has authored numerous books, and her research has been funded by national foundations. Gooden has received several awards and honors, including the Herbert Simon Best Book Award, American Political Science Association, VCU University Distinguished Faculty Service Award, the Charles H. Levine Memorial Award for Excellence in Public Administration, and the Jewel Prestige Pioneer Award from the Conference of Minority Public Administrators. A native of Martinsville in Henry County, Virginia, she earned an AS in Natural Science from Patrick Henry Community College, a BA in English, and an MA in Political Science, both from Virginia Tech. She received her doctorate from the Maxwell School of Citizenship and Public Affairs at Syracuse University. Dr. Gooden, I turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, James, and good afternoon, everyone. Delighted that you are joining us for our Alumni Lunch and Learn today. And I know we are all eager to hear from our keynote speaker, Governor Wilder. We will get to that in just a moment, but I would be remiss if I didn't share some wonderful news with you all relative to the L. Douglas Wilder School of Government and Public Affairs. I am so proud of the national reputation and the national prominence of the Wilder School. In the recent 2022 U.S. News and World Report rankings, which ranks more than 300 schools of public affairs nationally, the Wilder School ranks in the top 15% of all programs nationally, and we are tied for the #1 ranked school here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. You will notice in front of you that not only are we ranked highly overall, but we're also ranked in several specialty areas, including social policy, where we're in the top 20 at number 19, urban policy at number 28, and public management and leadership at number 34. So we're really pleased at the recognition that the educational excellence and leadership the Wilder School has, and we are really proud of our students and our faculty and our alumni, who I know all join me in being very proud of the rankings of the Wilder School. For those of you who may not have been as engaged with the Wilder School as you'd like, I also wanted to share with you an upcoming opportunity. We are recruiting our master's students. So I know we have a number of folks on the call who join us. Maybe you or someone you know is interested in going back and getting a master's degree. We offer a lot of master's degree options. We have a master's of public administration, criminal justice, urban and regional planning, and homeland security and emergency preparedness. All of these are designed to accommodate working professionals. So we will have next week, Thursday, May 27th at 12 noon, a virtual information session where you can hear about our programs. And the deadline for these applications to start in the fall is July 1st. So there's a little time left, but not much. We encourage you to please join us and learn more about our graduate programs and enroll with us in the fall. So you're going to hear just a glimpse of some of the many accomplishments and advice and wisdom from our keynote speaker today, Governor Wilder. I wanted to also share with you that we are only going to be sharing a sliver of some of the knowledge that Governor Wilder has made available to us. I wanted to share with you that last fall, I sat down with Governor Wilder. I had the privilege of conducting 12 podcast interviews with him. And we call these Conversations with Governor Wilder. He reflected on a number of topics. These are available via SoundCloud. And I know we have information in the chat in terms of how to access those episodes. But everything from running for governor, his historic campaign, disinvestment in South Africa, having the best financially managed state in the Commonwealth of Virginia, so his fiscal conservatism, thoughts about race in America, his run for mayor, turning 90 and reflecting back on some of the things, some of the milestones over the years. So this is an outstanding series, and we encourage you to, after today's session, to please take advantage of that educational resource as well. So I am indeed honored to introduce, who I know needs no introduction, the 66th Governor of Virginia, who is not only the namesake of the L. Douglas Wilder School of Government and Public Affairs, but also serves as a VCU Wilder School Distinguished Faculty Member. And he has been a faculty member at VCU for 25 years. So this is another anniversary that Governor Wilder is recently celebrating, in addition to his 90th birthday earlier this year and the 30th anniversary of his historic inauguration. He was elected in 1989 as the 66th governor of Virginia, and he served in that capacity from 1990 to 1994, in which he became the first African-American ever in the history of the United States to be elected governor. But there's much more. Governor Wilder has been in public service since 1969 when he was elected to the state Senate. So he brings more than 50 years of continuous dedication to advancing the lives and the livelihood of citizens and residents in the Commonwealth of Virginia, indeed in the nation and in the world. Many historic milestones undergird his legacy, including being responsible for introducing legislation that made the MLK holiday recognized here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. He holds a bachelor's degree in chemistry from Virginia Union University and earned a law degree from Howard University, and is also has a rich legacy in history as a very effective practicing attorney. And he established a legal firm that later became known as Wilder, Gregory and Associates. He also earned a Bronze Star in Korea for his heroism in ground combat. And it was interesting, we had Wilder School in-person graduation this past weekend. And someone asked me about Governor Wilder, and I said, yes, he's doing well. And they said, well, I know he had a Bronze Star in Korea, and they don't give those out. And I said, you're absolutely right, they do not. He's also the author of a book about his life, Son of Virginia, A Life in America's Political Arena. So I am indeed honored to be able to have the opportunity to speak with Governor Wilder today, and I will have an opportunity to speak with him following his keynote address to us. But I think his topic is very compelling. Leadership, what do you produce? We know that Governor Wilder, that you have produced a lot, and thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us here today. Governor Wilder.
Well, I can't thank you enough, Dean Gooden, for those kind words, but also for the opportunity to be connected with you and your leadership at the Wilder School. It's fascinating to have looked for this type of involvement, to be a part of that involvement, and to, quite frankly, to recognize that even at my age, I'm still in a position to make some degree of contribution. And your kind words are such as humble me to the degree of saying that's a whole lot that you've said for a guy who really was helped by so many people, all of the kind things that you said about me could never have taken place without a lot of people believing in me, believing that I could cut it, and believing that I could make it, and that I might be able to make a difference. The theme that we speak of in terms of leadership, what do you produce? What got me involved in that kind of theme when I was governor, when I would go to the various state agencies, and when I would be interviewing the people, whether they were the directors or the heads of departments or what have you, I would be introduced to them by saying, this is, for instance, Susan Gooden. She's the dean of this, that, and the other. She's at Vermont. And I would go past that. I would say, very good, good to meet you. Now, tell me what you produce. And they would look at me sometimes stunned to say, well, you know, I'm the dean, or I'm the director of this operation, or I'm the chief of staff for this, that, and the other. I said, okay. If you did not come in to work tomorrow, what would we miss? And they would, again, look at me stunned in many instances, feeling say, well, you know, he just doesn't get it. I just told you who I was. I said, no, you told me what your title was. My question is, what do you produce? And so in today's world, that question needs to be asked more so than ever before. Sure, I'm very pleased to have done some things, but the state song carried me back to old Virginia. They were ready to carry me out of Virginia. At the time I did it, I had only been sworn in office about a month. The first speech I ever made on the Senate floor was that. I had no idea it was a state song. I knew that it was a song that we were forced to learn the words to when I was a kid in school. But to understand that it was the state song and the preamble to it and the resolution adopting it says, in order to promote pride in the people of the Commonwealth, and especially the young people of the Commonwealth, we adopt this. Well, all you got to do is read the words and see the lamentation of a slave who says he wants to go back to Virginia where he labored so hard in the field for old master, where the corn and taters grow. And then the second stanza of the song, which says, I want to be reunited with old master and old missus in heaven. So it means, how can you be free when even in heaven you're going to be enslaved? So notwithstanding the opposition I received, crosses burning in front of my home, my children going to school were marked and said, well, hey, that's their father that did all of this. And they were in an all-white school at the time, Mary Munford at the time. But the principal of that school was very, very understanding man named Pat Ely. His children and I are good friends as well. And so those are the kinds of things that made me understand that it doesn't take an army to make a change. I was only one at the time. Oh, they didn't change the song until sometimes later, but they stopped saying it anywhere publicly. And so the name of the game is, what do you do with the opportunity to be there with your own efforts? You don't have to wait for anybody to come to be there with you. Do what you've got to do, and they will help you. People who opposed that song as legislators ultimately came to be some of the strongest patrons and co-patrons along with me to get it passed. They needed to hear what it did to those who were forced to sing it and to understand it. And so it's something that we also need to understand, particularly in these times. As Frederick Douglass said, power concedes nothing without a demand. You don't ask for certain things, you demand certain things. Why? Because it is right. Socrates, know thy right, then proceed. Not just going blindly into the darkness or into wherever you go and run to the extent of saying, well, this is, no, you're right. And that's why it's so important to demand the equity, to demand what we need to demand. These are times that leadership is so absolutely necessary. Absolutely necessary. Dean Gooden has introduced a course in which she speaks of the effects of the pandemic all along the line in housing and health and education. You name it. And it does affect, oh, they're talking about it now in Washington. And what are they talking about? Money. And that's my one word definition for politics. Money. You name me a single thing that they're discussing in Washington that doesn't involve money. Name something that they are discussing in Virginia that doesn't involve money. Oh, we've got racism at VMI. Oh, yeah, but we've got to spend $1 million or more. And so we can study it and find out, well, wait, where's that money going to come from? You mean my money? My tax dollars? I got to spend $1 million to find out something that, I hate to put it this way, but people like Stevie Wonder could tell you, wait a minute, we know what's there. And when you look at the kinds of things that are taking place in government, we need to make certain that we don't have to wait for agreements before you take action. Do what you have to do. I was told I couldn't run for the state senate because they've never had a state senator elected since Reconstruction. I said, well, what does that have to do with me? I'm qualified. I know the issues. I've been involved. I see things that are taking place that need to be addressed. I don't see anybody at the legislative or the judicial branches or the administrative branches addressing them. Well, the governors and the legislatures appoint the governors, appoint the judges. Judges are not elected in Virginia, and I'm not saying they should be. But to the extent that they do that, if I want to have my hands on the knife that cuts the pie, not just a fair piece of the pie, I want to have my hand on the knife to make certain that there is a fair piece. For me to constantly ask you to give me a piece of pie, would it be all right? And so now you've got any numbers of people saying today, oh, look, things have to be better for you now, and particularly the people of color, because you got more of you. More doesn't necessarily mean better. What's important is that what you have is there to the extent that it converses with, meets with, and is accountable to the people. You don't have to wait for an agreement to act. If you say the time to do it is when it is wrong to speak. You need to know you're right. You need to have that, as I said, one word definition. Never be afraid of criticism. You should be concerned when you're not criticized, because that means people know that you're doing absolutely nothing but going along to get along. This doesn't mean you're trying to find problems to solve just for the heck of it, but it makes me so sick to see people say, well, you know, I am this, that, and the other now. And look at some of the things that we talk about in education. Look at and I was in a meeting not too long ago, a year or so ago, and someone was saying, well, what do you think would be good ways to be involved in politics and in government? And you'd be surprised at the agreement that people were saying, well, you know, I tell you, a good place to start would be on the school board. Let's start on the school because, you know, then you can work yourself up. Where do you need more trained people than on the school board? People who know something about curriculum, something about budget, something about subject matter, someone who's in a position to determine whether teachers are better paid, but that teachers do the work, that you can concentrate on administration to the degree of making certain you enlarge upon that policy rather than to enlarge administration. Deputy this, system that, okay, let's cut it back. And so to the extent as we see what's been taking place, we need to make it clear that we're not going to be satisfied until we are in that rank. Your rankings, Dean, when you speak about the kinds of things that you've done, your Research Institute for Social Equity, RISE, you, as has been pointed out here today, internationally recognized, chosen to receive the award that the Levine Award that hasn't been given in 6 years. First woman ever to get it, first African American ever to get it. Is that just happenstance? No, you were trained. You've never forgotten your roots. The people who have known you know you now. And that's why when we walk through the streets, it makes me so proud to see people recognize the two of us. And when people stop what they're doing and they'll say, "Think Doug Wilder," not governor, not hello, Mr. Wilder, Doug Wilder, how are you? Because they know that's the person that asked them to vote for them, asked their parents to vote for them, their grandparents to vote for them. They'll never forget you. And I have tried to show that I will never forget them. I've enjoyed my opportunities to be here at the school. I'm honored, of course, to have the school named for me. But to the extent that I can contribute, I want to continue so to do. That's why I'm so proud of so many of the students that have gone on. I hear from them. They're high offices. Some of them are occupying some very, very important positions, particularly some of those youngsters that I brought into my administration. They're heading back big companies now. They're in charge. And when you see them, they remember me as the person that worked with them. And, oh, they said Wilder's crazy, bringing all these young people into government. And these young people helped me to make Virginia the #1 ranked state in the nation 2 years in a row in terms of how to handle money. They're the ones that caused us to be recognized in so many different areas for leadership. And this is one of the things that I wanted to point out. When I ever was running for any office or any other thing, I never stressed race. I never talked about race. I never considered myself a racial person. I considered myself first an American, then a Virginian. And then being here in Richmond, I considered myself a citizen. And this is what I would encourage people to do. Don't have that badge of inferiority nor superiority. Be the person that you are. Be the individual that you are. Choose your friends as a result of what they contribute to your well-being and you to theirs. That mutuality is something that will last you for a lifetime. And it's just a pleasing thing to know that we still have that. Yes, we do need your help. And I say your help, all of those of you who are participating and being a part of the polity, the decision-making process in our nation, to make certain that those who say that they represent you do just that, or if not, make certain they no longer represent you nor anyone else. Vote them out without apology. And it doesn't make any difference in terms of what they say, well, we are going to do, or to have people to say, well, you know, I didn't have this, I didn't have the other. Vote for me. Well, what the heck does that tell you? You didn't have, are you going to do anything? What was that you have done and what will you do? I would think that there will always be those who will not be in a position to say what they produce. And I think when you ask yourselves that after we have had an opportunity to reflect, ask yourself, are you really doing the production? You mentioned that I was in Korea. pretty much think that's where I got it understood that I could do it. Because when Harry Truman decided with the stroke of a pen, there will be no more discrimination in the armed services. It wasn't debated in the Congress. It wasn't carried before the Supreme Court. He did it. A man from Independence, Missouri, who had been accused of being anti-civil rights, et cetera, but he did it. And so he didn't do it to be recognized. He knew he'd be criticized. As a matter of fact, he was. He was opposed by any numbers of persons, including the leadership in Virginia, the political leadership, but he persevered. And so when I was in Korea, recognizing that I could lead and command troops, whites, that we ate from the same mess kits, we slept in the same quarters, we did everything. And that was so important for me, because I said, if you can do it in the military, I'm here fighting for the rights of Koreans to be free in Korea, but I have to go back home and not be able to participate in the freedoms that I learned were supposedly for me. 8 blocks from my home, Patrick Henry made a speech, give me liberty or give me death. And yet I found out that that liberty was not extended or to be extended to me. And so I'm grateful for the opportunities to have served. I'm grateful for the continued opportunities to participate. And I'm grateful to you, Dean Gooden, and for the leadership and your staff and all of those associated with making certain that the School of Government and Public Affairs at Virginia Commonwealth University will always be in the ranking of those who consider the best. And we will continue to strive to do our best. And I look forward to continuing as long as that opportunity exists for me so to do. God bless you and thank you, and we'll continue to talk.
Thank you so much, Governor. It is always a wonderful opportunity to listen and to learn from you and from your experiences. And I'm sure I'm not the only one to say, "Oh my goodness, President Truman, you're taking us back quite a bit." So it's wonderful to have that historical perspective, and also making that connection with things today. So for those of you who are joining, I'm going to ask Governor Wilder a few questions. We're going to have a quick conversation, and then please put your questions into the chat function, and we will try to get to as many questions that we can, because the governor is always very generous in terms of taking questions from the audience, and we appreciate that. I wanted to pick up on a point where you said, don't be afraid of criticism, and people are going to criticize, call you a troublemaker. You talked about that a bit in your commencement address to our Wilder School students last week. Can you talk a little bit more about how leaders should gauge when to speak out, when to make trouble, as you would say it? What are some lessons there?
Well, the thing is right, the time is always right. And so I've always gauged it by, if this is wrong, then it's right for me to say it's wrong. When? Now. There is no timetable for advancing to the limits of what's good and what's bad. You do it when you can do it. You say it when you can say it. I hadn't even been sworn in, but 2 months on the MLK thing. It was wrong for us not to be able, I'm sorry, the state song. It was wrong. I had no idea it was the state song until I got elected. Yeah. Is it my fault? May have been. I knew it was a song we all had to sing. Everybody knew, carry me back to old Virginia. But when we would go to legislative functions, at the end of the functions, if you had any entertainment, we would all have to stand and embrace each other and sing that song. Now, did we have to wait until 2019 and join a mob of people going down the street saying, well, this is wrong? Because no, it was wrong then. And that's why it was important to say that it was wrong. And so who makes that determination for you? And that, I would imagine, is something else that you would say. If you don't know what's right, then you should try to find out what's right. And who would you find that out from? Who would your associates be? Who would your friends be? What do you do in terms of making social change? What do you do in terms of what you do at RISE, Research Institute for Social Equity? What is social equity? Fairness, dictated by the principles of fairness that have always been known to all people, that should not be relegated to some groups and not others. And I think once you start along that path, you'll be emboldened or you'll be criticized. But if you can't take that, as they say, if you can't stand the heat, you got to get out the kitchen.
So when you think back on your leadership career and all the positions that you've held, what are some of the core fundamental principles that you think you had from day one that you still practice today? And are there any principles that you abandoned along the way?
Well, I never did pay too much attention to criticism, but I learned and have learned more so, always listen to the people. They can tell you more, they know more, because one of the things I did when I took the 60-day campaign swing around Virginia, I didn't know Virginia. I thought I did. Been in the military, been in traveling through, I thought Roanoke was Southwest Virginia.
Well, we're glad you made your way to Martinsville.
Yes, well, I did. And I got strong support from Martinsville, from Henry County, from people that you and I both know mutually. And there were people who would say, look, no, we never voted for an African-American, but we never had a chance. We never had a candidate there. We want to hear what you say. So one of the things that has always been with me is the people. I have always had the confidence of the people. And that one thing that I do find everywhere that has never changed, the hunger for education. People are hungry to know more. They want their kids to know more, and they'll sacrifice for their children with the understanding that children should sacrifice for their children. That's what we did that in our communities heretofore. As I said, I had a big family, had 8 siblings, and there were 8 of us, really. Really, there were 10. And my father was working in an insurance company. He didn't make a lot of money. He was frugal. And my mother obviously couldn't do too much other than take care of all those kids. But the family was close-knit. And we were a part of the community. And that's unfortunately disappearing in many places today. Our communities are no longer a part of the people because the people are not a part of the communities. One of the things I learned from being involved as mayor was go to the people and find out what you need to learn in terms of crime. Don't be afraid to talk to them. They want you to help them, but they want you to respect them. And we did that. And that's why we reduced crime so much so when I was mayor. We reduced it from being one of the big things against us in the state or in the nation to be a model for what we call community policing. And the policeman lived in the community, lived in the precinct. Rather than to call 911, you called him and he went and he responded. And that's, I guess the shorter answer would be experience with the people, learning from them at all levels, and not necessarily talking to those people who support you, even those that don't support you. Listen to them, because they might have a good reason for not supporting your point of view.
You know, you mentioned that your father was conservative and frugal, and oftentimes when we think about Governor Wilder, we think about your legacy relative to fiscal conservatism and establishing the rainy day fund here in Virginia, which I'm not sure that everyone in the audience realizes. And you know, when we think about when we first got into the pandemic, there was a lot of discussion about the rainy day fund appreciation that you had set up the rainy day fund. What motivated you to establish the rainy day fund, Governor Wilder?
Well, I talk about things I didn't know about when I was first elected to the Senate. When I was first elected to the being governor, I went to the custom is you go and you speak to your current governor and you talk about the budget, and you're going to make a speech in a few days. He makes one leaving and you make one come in. And so you talk about the money. So I asked my predecessor, who was a good friend, and we worked together well. I said, what's the status? How are we fixed? Where's the money? And he said, we're working on it. I said, well, you know, I got to make a speech very shortly, and you will be too, but I want to know to what I can look to. And he said, well, you don't have what I'd like to give you or leave you, but you won't be broke. And I said, that's good too, but could you just tell me what that is? He said, well, yeah, but I've got to go and talk to the speaker, A.L. Philpott, and let him know what the situation is. I said, well, can you just tell me? He said, yes, I'm going to leave you $35 million. I said, what? You're going to leave me $35 million? I said, well, I can't believe it. Well, things gonna be better. So when I became governor of Virginia, I was told that I would have, in terms of the revenue plus balance, of $35 million. That ended up being a $2.5 billion shortfall. That was no $35 million. And so I said, we're not going to spend any more. We're going to spend on necessities, not niceties. I want you to curtail your budget. We're going to create a rainy day fund so that other governors will never have to go through this. And then we enshrined it by putting it into the state constitution. So Virginia can't go broke because we changed that. And that's exactly what happened. That's how it happened. And sure, we got not a good recognition for it, but the people accepted it because I made certain that we were not going to have any sacred cows, that we're not going to reward these people and they could spend just like they used to and punish those who've never had it. And so we adopted certain measures by which we got that done. And yes, that's one of the most proud things that's one of the things that I'm most proud of in terms of what we were able to accomplish.
So I know we've talked a bit about the past, but I know you're also very engaged actively in terms of the future. You're still very much engaged in politics of the nation, of the state, and of the world. Had the opportunity to listen in to your interview yesterday with Jeff Katzner, who you all were talking about the upcoming election. So we have a statewide election for governor here in the fall. As voters are looking for candidates, what are the key leadership qualities that they should look for?
They should look for those persons who have shown by experience or by commitment that they will be connecting with the people, that they recognize fiscal responsibility, that they are looking for someone who is able to work with all parties, Republicans, Democrats, independents, of color, not of color, no gaps in terms of relationships. And they should look to people who, in my judgment, speak to those issues. Well, I never ran for any position saying anything about my grandparents were slaves. And I never did. Wasn't ashamed of it, but how does that help anybody? Me to talk about my grandparents being slaves. I never talked about, well, I've done this to the extent of being anything other than the laws that I wanted to see changed, like compulsory school attendance. That was taken off the books during segregation. And I put that back on. No, did anybody tell me to do that? No. And so, as you point out, at this next election next year, or this year, I'm sorry, why should I vote for you? And well, you know, I was born suddenly, but well, everybody's born somewhere. Why should I vote for you? Well, you know, I'm this, that, and the other. Have you done anything that I have been made aware of? Can you tell me what it is? And when people speak about bold leadership, did you bring bold leadership before? Are you saying now today there's no bold leadership? Well, say it. Then what are you doing now to make certain that that leadership is more than what it is? What does your record show? And so I don't think it's incumbent upon those who are running for office to have necessarily been elected to any previous positions. But I think it helps to have had some experience dealing with those issues. And we point to education, we point to crime, we point to finances, we speak to health. And that's one of the problems that the pandemic is hitting and letting people know, that the problems of the past, particularly those racial problems, the underfunding, those are the kind, even Joe Biden recognizes now that there were things that he did that he regrets when he was in the Senate. 3 strikes and you're out. People being put in the penitentiary. Oh, now it's wrong. Okay, but then it was wrong. And consequently, it's not a matter of looking to see which Democrat or which Republican or which independent is best. The question, who is best and what is best for the issues that confront the American people and the people of Virginia today?
Well, we'll turn now to a few questions from our audience. I'll start with a question from John Venuti, Chief Venuti, who's here with us. He says, Governor, based on your keen insight, what does the future of policing in America look like moving forward? And is there a new leadership profile for law enforcement that will be needed?
I would say to Chief Venuti, if you were going to be that model of profile, it would be great for America. It would be great for Virginia, because you've understood the need to connect with people. You've understood the need to understand people, and you've shown that. And so I think that new model has to be almost a uniforms community policing. I think it would be good if we could have that adopted across the nation. The chief is asking a good question. I remember when there was only one person on the VCU police force, one police force. Now we see how it's gotten larger. We see also the need for what I call uniform training. I put that bill in when I was in the state Senate, that there must be uniform training of police. Doesn't matter if you're going to be in Henrico, or Chesterfield, or Richmond, it doesn't matter. Your training should be the same. You're going to be in Southwest Virginia, it doesn't matter. Your training should be the same. And so I think many people are not aware of the fact of the expertise that is required of policemen, of the required of people, the expertise that's required in terms of those who are detectives. And many of them have several degrees. Some of them are masters, PhD, but they choose to work in police work because that's close to the people. People cannot live in a lawless society. And I think that message has to be more loudly proclaimed and shown. It's one thing to modify, it's another thing to get rid of. And those people who are speaking this nonsense about defund to the extent of getting rid of the police, got to be absolutely crazy. Who wants to live in a lawless society? I certainly don't. And the people that I talk to don't want that either.
We have a question from Ramona Chapman. She asks, while governor, what are you most proud of in your experiences with Virginia's Native American tribes? Could you suggest ways that state agencies can build relations with the sovereign, federally recognized tribes?
Yes, I can. I had great relationships, and I used to say this to several of them, and particularly those from Charles City, where I presently live in Charles City, and the chief there and the others across Virginia need to let the public know that they're not there to be recognized ceremonially on Thanksgiving Day or some other day that we all come together. They were here. They've been here forever. And so Columbus didn't discover America. America was here, and people discovered it. They lived here for others to come and claim it. That's what they did. And to the extent of making certain that we include these people as we include other Americans in the polity and the decision-making processes, and that we include them in, and as you and I know, and particularly I know because having been governor, you know, and we see it all over the nation for those places where the reservations exist. That had to be changed. There needs to be continued improvement, and they need to be brought more so into the governance of our country.
So Nakina Douglas Glenn, who's a member of our faculty and directs the Gracie Harris Leadership Institute, asked a question about women's leadership in the Commonwealth of Virginia. So what can we do to change the political leadership narrative so that women are given the opportunities that their leadership demands?
Isn't that interesting that she would ask that question when it appears with all of the women who are running for governor this year, none of them have been deemed by the political leadership to be worthy. It has gotten so bad, they think, that you had to bring someone who had a chance when no one had gauged that experience factor for him to say that he can't support any of the women who are running because they're not qualified. And so I think in answer to Dr. Glenn's question, the people of Virginia have to show by their votes as to whether they are satisfied with that, whether they're pleased with that, to make their choices not based on who's a woman or who's a man, but who possesses the opportunities and the qualities for leadership, who has been given the opportunity and the chance to show they have that leadership. And it's very unfortunate that we have not had that in Virginia. Could that take place this year? It might. You've got several people running for governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general. But they should not be elected just because they're women. Just like I should never have been elected just because I was of African-American heritage. I think qualifications are there. People need to see those qualifications. And my advice to the women who are running, and that's to all of them, don't run because you are a woman. Run because you are qualified to lead and extol that record of leadership that you possess or the visions that you possess, and the people will listen to you.
So Stephanie Williams asks, what character trait do you possess that you feel has helped you the most to be the best leader that you can be?
Well, listening and not feeling sorry for yourself, being able to get up after you've been knocked down, and as they say, never let them see you cry. Let them know, never let them know. They'll think that they hurt you. And I learned that in career, I guess, because we, in many instances, were supposedly not to be able to do what many times we did. And yet, even we then were able to show that we could do it, we could persevere, and we could overcome the obstacles. I guess the biggest thing again is to really identify what your obstacles are, to identify who your enemy is. Just go back for a moment to the state song. Was it changed? Yes. Was it stopped? Yes. Why? Because people came to recognize that it made absolutely no sense. And there's no need to tell people that we've had a difference of opinion. You show how that difference of opinion has affected people. So if there is a character trait, I guess one of the biggest things that you need to develop is an opportunity to be able to criticize yourself and to see your own shortcomings.
That's great. It's very powerful. So this question doesn't have a name attached to it, but is asking about your reputation as being socially progressive and fiscally conservative. So if you're thinking in today's term, what are some things that you think leaders need to be socially progressive on and things that they need to be fiscally conservative?
Well, those words, progressive and conservative, vary. Depends on where you are. What's conservative in some states would not be considered conservative in other states. For instance, there's a great deal of difference between California and Virginia. And what is considered moderate in California might very well be considered a little conservative here in Virginia. Again, you have to go by the mores. You have to go by the societal aspect. You've got to go by the communities. You've got to listen to people again. There are those people who are running for statewide office now who they will tell you that they travel the state, but many of them haven't. They don't know the state. I know somebody from this part of the state, but have you lived in that area? I made it a point to take 60 days and not stay in hotels. I stayed only in the homes of the people in those areas, Lee County, Washington County, Russell County, Lebanon, and those kinds of places. And I guess that biggest character trait you could develop is the ability to understand, even when you disagree with someone, to understand and to at least hear their points of view. And then if you feel necessary so to do, convince them of the error of their ways. And then, as Lyndon Johnson was famous for saying, come, let us reason together.
Well, our time is almost up, but I wanted to take the privilege of asking the last question, which is one of my questions. You know, one of the things I find most rewarding is when we have the opportunity to walk around together and I see the people who come up to you, Governor Wilder, can I take a picture with you? Governor Wilder, and whether we're in Minnesota or right here out on Franklin Street at the Wilder School. So you are a leader that not only is a strong leader, but clearly a leader who commands respect. Yet you are very personable. People from all over feel like they know you, that they have a strong connection with you. I think that's a very rare and extremely admirable combination. So could you share with us what you've done, how you've conducted and carried yourself that's been able to allow you to build and sustain that signature quality?
Well, as my mother said to me the night that I was elected to the state Senate, don't let your head get too big. I've always remembered that. And I've never allowed any office that I've occupied or any accolade that has come my way to make me believe that I've been changed as a person. I've always wanted to have core values. And I've like to have always said, I never had to go out of my home to find heroes. My heroes were right in my house, my mother and my father and my siblings. And we I lament so much on a daily basis the fact that so many homes are absent, that community relationship, the filial relationship, kids without real parents, uh, many who don't have communities that supported them. And I've had to have people tell me when I was a kid, look, don't you ever stay out of school. And if I see you in the street, I'm going to tell your mother, I didn't go to school, but don't you make the mistake that I made, because without education, you're not going to be able to cut it. So I go back again to the people. And if you believe in the people to the extent that you believe in yourself, that connection will never change.
Well, Governor, thank you so much for all of the excellent wisdom and advice and your generosity of time and sharing your experiences with us. When you ask what does leadership produce, it's very, very clear that your leadership has produced and continues to produce volumes and volumes for us. So thanks for all that you have given. For those of you who are interested in learning and reading more about Governor Wilder in his own words, I commend to you his book, Son of Virginia, and I commend to you our SoundCloud podcast series. Again, that information is in the chat feature, so that you can hear more of the conversations that we did as part of that 12-part series. And thank you so much, Governor, not only for what you have done and continue to do for the Commonwealth of Virginia and America, but also for all of your many, many contributions here to the L. Douglas Wilder School of Government and Public Affairs.
Thank you, and I'm grateful, more so than I can express. Thank you so much.
So with that, I will hand it back to James Wasilewski, who will close us out and say a little bit more about our upcoming June series.
Thank you so much, Governor Wilder and Dean Gooden, for this incredible session and discussion. Always insightful, always thoughtful, and makes us pay special attention to being mindful of everything that we do. Also, a wonderful thank you to each of our participants for today's session. Thank you so much for joining us. We hope that you will complete the survey evaluation for today's session. This includes suggestions for future topics for any upcoming Wilder School Lunch and Learns for us to consider. A recording of the session will be made available on the Wilder School YouTube site as well. That link is shared and will be shared also in the follow-up email. Be sure to mark your calendars for our next Lunch and Learn session on Wednesday, June the 16th. It'll be here before we know it. It'll be held at noon, as all of our sessions are. Our featured speaker will be Amy White, Assistant Secretary of Transportation. She'll be speaking with us about the topic on the move: vacations, work, school, the role of transportation in a post-COVID Virginia. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us, and we will see you in June. Take care and have a great week.